Today, I'm going to talk about my net worth, and a disclaimer, say this before I make any kind of video like this. This is not a flex. This is me just trying to convey what's possible in the creative world, and namely in photography and filmmaking, YouTube, sponsored stuff, all those things. We're going to talk all about that today. Made a video about my net worth at the age of 31 last year and came to the conclusion that I was around $523,000. Dwindled over the course of the year, kind of plateaued, lost some finances, market tanked, but we're kind of at a place now where it's resurfacing, coming back in the green more than what it was last year. Roughly $609,770, roughly. It's impossible to be accurate about these things. I truly never thought I would be sitting here talking about this specific thing in this context. I was a teacher in my professional career. I went to college to become a special education teacher. I taught for 3 years out of college while I grew my wedding photography and filmmaking business. Once it became too overwhelming to do both, shooting 25 weddings a year and teaching full-time and coaching and commuting and having our first child, I realized I needed to jump full-time. So I did that in June of 2016, and I've been full-time with my business ever since. In that time, I shot tons of weddings, still got up to 30 to 35 weddings a year, and then started my YouTube channel in 2018. Now I'm doing commercial work. We have a studio, just shot a documentary. Things just continue to diversify both practically and financially. People often ask me, how do I manage diversifying and growing in that way over time? And the truth is, and my default answer is always community. I'm sitting in our studio, Creative Club Chicago, right now with, 10 other people that work out of here. And we all go after our own businesses, growing our own businesses, and help and hire each other to try new endeavors and build the things that we have already built and are trying to grow. So many people in this space have helped me, and now I have hired help as well. Shua. How many times have we done that video? And this last switch into documentary really challenged me, and really was honestly one of the biggest risks in my career financially. That's pretty much over as far as the production side goes, and now we're deep in the editing cave of editing that documentary. Going full time and shooting 30 weddings a year definitely brought me over the threshold of making 6 figures a year, and was extremely significant, 2-3 times the amount of money I was making as a teacher. But things really blew open once I started diversifying with YouTube, getting into educational content, and selling my own digital products. And that's really kind of what blew the doors open and gave me the ability to invest in something like creating a documentary. I can't emphasize enough that having your own digital assets and your own things that you create, you're not just selling other businesses, other people's things. It's really significant, because if you think about partnerships with other companies, they can only go so far because the company also needs to profit. LUTs and presets, the digital assets for photographers and filmmakers, as well as my course, The Classroom on Wedding Photography and Wedding Filmmaking, which, by the way, is reopening on July 10th. The Classroom is everything I know about wedding photography and wedding filmmaking. I poured everything into this course, everything I know about that business and how to make it profitable and how to have sustainability in that career. I touch on philosophy, I touch on investing and finances in the business. I even talk to my CPA in the process. It's over 16 hours of content on each side, on the photo and video side. In previous years, I opened up the Classroom for 1 week of enrollment and then it closed, but this time I'm opening it up for enrollment again, and it's going to stay open indefinitely. But on July 10th through the next Monday, July 17th, we're going to be offering it at a steep discount of up to $600 on the bundle and $400 for a single purchase. If that interests you, or if you just want the free module, which is over 2 hours, it's about client relationships and dealing with clients, you can check that out completely free. First link in the description. And then, just be on the lookout July 10th for the Classroom to reopen again. I'll be making tons of content that week. I have 2 YouTube channels now, this one, and then I have a running channel too, which is going really well. Thanks to Shua. He's been editing a lot of those videos. A lot of fun doing another passion, but now turning it into a business also. All right, let's break down all the finances so you can see what that $600,000 is coming from. In cash right now, between my personal and my business, I have about $66,500 liquid. I could just pull it out of the bank and use it however I like. And obviously that's fluctuating all the time. So I made these numbers yesterday and they're different today. I always like to keep a healthy amount of cash in my business bank account so that I have the ability to invest in specific things like reopening the Classroom or investing in a documentary, things that are much bigger scale than just buying a camera or a lens or any other kind of gear that's, in the $2,000 to $6,000 range, but looking at more of the tens of thousands in investments. People might think I'm crazy for doing that, but it served me really well and psychologically really helps me feel like there's a foundation there, especially with being a homeowner now, having 4 children, anything going crazy off the rails at any moment. Next up, we have all of my gear. I made a whole list of the biggest items I have. At the end of the day, probably roughly around 38,000. I put 38,300 here between all the mirrorless and cinema cameras, lenses, film cameras, and honestly, we just get a shot of the fridge with the film. That's half of it right there. I didn't list out all the audio and lighting and all of that stuff that could be liquidated in this studio, but I just rounded it to about 10,000. I know a lot of people are starting out in their own businesses, look at a suite of gear like that, feel really intimidated and wonder how the heck that's even possible. But as I mentioned earlier, the core foundation was me building my wedding photography and filmmaking business. And that was the foundation of how I grew and diversified my own business to the Frankenstein that it is now. Next up, we have two cars. I have a 2019 Toyota RAV4 and a 2013 Honda Odyssey minivan life. And both of them total at market right now, $38,000. Something I've always wanted to include in my portfolio, my financial portfolio, is real estate. We bought our first home in 2018. That was a condo in Chicago, and we still haven't sold it, even though we've moved out of it. So we bought it for $260,000, and we've had 2 different renters in it so far. Whenever I want to estimate the value of our condo, I always go to our loan officer's estimation through his company, as well as the Zillow estimate, and I try to find a happy medium because Zillow tends to go high and the other one tends to go low. But we renovated that place with a ton of beautiful things, and it has a ton of value for that reason. So I estimate it's probably around $347,000 now. We still have $163,384 on the loan. That is essentially being paid every single month by our renters. The rent we charge right now is $2,500, but our expenses are just shy of $2,400. So we profit maybe a little over $100 a month. So things just being paid down without us having to put anything into it, which is incredible, gaining equity in it all the time. So the equity as it stands right now in the condo is $183,616. And then in 2021, 2 years ago from this point, we bought our house, and we bought the house for $466,000. We put 5% down on that house because I was wanting to keep that cash available to invest in the first launch of the classroom, which I'm really happy I did. We put 5% down, and now we have about 20% equity in the home because it's appreciated in value so much. Same thing, I evaluated both Zestimate and our loan officer's estimation of what the house costs now, and I came to the conclusions around $546,150, giving us equity in our home of $125,670. Now, for a while between both mortgages, we were paying extra principal every single month, but since inflation has been so high, I have not been doing extra principal. We're still doing 1 extra principal payment per year, a month's worth of extra principal payment, because if you do that, you cut 7 years off of the mortgage from 30 years down to 23. I want to limit the amount we're putting on the principal right now because the dollar is just losing value. That's happening, then your interest rate becomes even more powerful. We locked in the condo at 2.625% on a 15-year mortgage, and we have the house at 3.5% on a 30-year mortgage. Now, side note, if you really wanted to be technical here, you could count our mortgages against us in this net worth, and it's a contested issue. And the first time I made a video like this, I did it that way, and I essentially had 0 net worth. This time I'm doing it a bit different. I've changed. We all change. I don't really consider it consumer debt because it's not really consumer debt. I equate consumer debt to credit card, student loan, personal loans, anything that doesn't really hold value, but just is debt to you that can't be sold and recouped. So if we sold the house, we wouldn't have that debt anymore, and we would actually be in the positive based on the equity numbers I just gave for each property. The difference is that the houses are assets. So like I said, if you sell it, you recoup all that money and profit if it's gained in value. So my retail investing accounts are held through Robinhood and TD Ameritrade, but TD Ameritrade was bought by Charles Schwab, but BlackRock owns everything, so who cares? I know people would ridicule me for using Robinhood, but I've been using it for like 6 years now. It's really simple. So between those two accounts, I have $54,923 as of yesterday. I've been putting $50 a day into the market, the same as last video, $10 into Apple, $10 into Tesla, $10 into Google, and $20 into VTI, Vanguard's total market index, every single market day for the past like 2.5 years. Now those investments were in the red for like 2 solid years, and the market finally just switched and the account is back into green. So that's really exciting to see because it was really depressing to see all of those investments tank for a very long time. Our Roth IRAs are now sitting at $67,204. That's between my wife and I. I have a SEP IRA through my business for tax deductions and contributing outside of a Roth. That's at $31,557 right now. I have about $4,000 in crypto right now, but I can't withdraw it because it's being held within my BlockFi account, which was in bed with FTX, and FTX was essentially a Ponzi scheme. Hopefully I get that money back. But the lesson at the end of the day there is don't put too much of your net worth into a money-making endeavor that isn't proven or guaranteed. And for so long in business, I just assumed that every year of growth meant that there needed to be financial growth as well. And that was pretty much par for the course for every year from 2018 on. This year was the first year I really started to notice that diversifying this much, having my first employee, the market not doing so well, and a multitude of other things might account for a year that isn't as great green as the years pass. And the truth is, growth isn't always linear. It's not always going to double every single year or increase a certain percentage it was in the previous year. I know that's a lot of people's goals, but for me, that's not my goal anymore. As I continue to make more money and invest in more personal things and personal artistic projects that don't necessarily need to make a ton of money. I hope you're watching this video and you feel inspired, not intimidated, rather seeing what is possible, seeing what I have done and applying it to your own entrepreneurship and your own creative endeavors. A lot of creative people, creative artists have a hard time doing business, but if you apply a lot of the same creative aspects of your personality and your brain to your business, you'd be surprised at what you can make profitable. A lot of other filmmakers in the YouTube world have been coming up to me recently and been sharing how much they appreciate the financial stuff that I share here. I always feel pretty intimidated sharing this stuff, knowing the social ramifications of it, but those kinds of comments from people are always what keep me going, and I hope that's the case for you as well. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them down below. I'll try to get to as many as I can, and I'll see you next week in the Classroom Jobs. Later.